Welcome everybody to today's is your website telling the right story workshop. I recognize a lot of you guys that are in front of us, and probably a lot of y'all that are online as well. So I'm Heather Loveridge. For anyone who I haven't met yet, I am founder and chief storyteller of Magnolia Media Group, and we are an agency focused on helping nonprofits tell their story well. And I'm also the chief storyteller for the Community Foundation and have been for a little over 5 years now. So I know, isn't that crazy? It'll be 6 years coming up in February. So we love working with the Community Foundation and the other nonprofits that we have as clients. And I also love working with Amanda Sutt, and I'm going to pass it over to her because she's going to lead off part of the first part of our workshop.
All right, thank you, Heather. I'm Amanda Sutt with Rock, Paper, Scissors, and we're a branding and marketing firm based in Lawrenceville and here in Gwinnett, and we work with a lot of nonprofits as well. And so a lot of what we focus on is the visual side. We do use storytelling as well, and that's what we work with Heather on. And then it's connecting all those pieces of technology. So that's what I get to lead off today. So I want to hit on Valerie, you're going to have to promote side. Thank you. I'm going to hit on what we're going to cover today. We're going to start with, hold on, I'm going to actually have to look at this. Defining your website purpose. So if we look at that of like, what do you want your website to do? That's where we're going to start today. You got to start there before you decide if it's working or not working. And I'm going to pass it back over to Heather, and she's going to go right into messaging and what is your story. Then we're going to talk a little bit about web design and user interface. That's a critical part. It has to be a good experience for your users to be able to use the website, because if it's not easy, they're going to go find somebody else where it is easier. And the last thing we're going to wrap up, we have a guest speaker to talk about website optimization. So we're going to talk about analytics and SEO. So all right, so we're going to start with defining your website purpose. This is an interactive presentation. You guys who are here, you have worksheets in front of you. For everybody at home or at work, you received a Word document so you can follow along. I am actually not going to do a ton of talking today because I want to give you guys some time to think and work through this. The goal is that you're going to walk away today with a plan of action, or at least next steps of what you want to do to improve that web experience. Per the story that Randy just set up for us, it is so critical that your website works well for you so that people who are shopping around deciding who to work with, donate with, because they have all this extra money, you want to make sure that you're connecting and resonating with them. One of the challenges with websites is they are not screaming at you like things in your business. They are not necessarily a crisis, but they are very important. So how do you make this important work a priority? And so that's why I want you to walk away today with something of next steps and what do you want to do with that. So that's why we're going to start with defining your purpose. All right. So this is where we want to kind of start to think about, okay, what do you need your website to do for you? So often it's like, oh, I need a good donate button and I need to put our message on there. But if those are the two things that you're trying to, like a brochure site and getting money through it, they're important, but your website can do a lot more for you. And if nothing else, this last year and a half now, we've realized how critical technology is. And what we've really seen is the use of technology to kind of explain. We've progressed as society 7 years in our ability to use technology within 1 year, because think about it, everybody's grandma knows how to Zoom. Did we ever think that that was going to be possible? So that's part of it, is we have a more adapt society now. And so that means we have to catch up, because if you're not taking care of your website and somebody else is, it's going to make you look outdated. Even if your service is top notch, it's a really critical piece to make sure that you're reflecting that. I want to start with a definition. I'm going to read it here because I can't see my speaker notes. So I want you to like wrap your head around like what it is, because we all think about, oh, I have a website, but let's start at the core and then work backwards to what we want it to do. So by definition, it is a group of worldwide web pages, usually containing hyperlinks to each other and made available online by an individual, company, educational institute, organization, or government. So it's just content and links. That's what it is at the basic need. We all do that. That's not a problem. But I want you to start thinking bigger. What else can it do? Because we are really only limited by our imagination, usually our funding. But Randy just said there's a lot of funding to be able to improve this technology. And so I think that's an important thing to be thinking about with these grants and pieces coming out is how can you use that to invest? And we're seeing that it's really easy to get sponsors to improve your web experience when you have a clear plan and say, this is what I need to invest in. There you go. All right. So that's my little, I'll step off that soapbox for a second. Now I want you to go ahead and get your worksheets out. And I'm going to give you a couple minutes for some of these things. So yeah, this is, for those that here, this is the one you want to start with. So before we even start talking about your website, I actually want you to take a couple minutes, and I'm going to only give you a couple minutes, and fill in your organizational goals. Like, what do you want your nonprofit to be doing in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months? Just jot those down. So start big picture before we start getting specific with your website. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and keep moving along, keep filling in as I talk. But the next section is I want you to fill in your marketing goals for the next 3, 6, and 12 months. So clue is look at your organizational goals and what story do you need to be getting out as you're planning the next little bit. Okay, I'm going to keep filling it. Work on this later too, but I want to keep moving and progressing through this because we have a lot we want to cover today. So I am going to have us flip to the next page as well. And there's a question at the top of the page is, what is your website doing what you need it to do? And part of that, it's easier to answer if you understand what your organization is doing and what does your marketing need to do and say, is my website meeting this need or not? And so I did go ahead and give you a little bit of a assessment of what your website is. It also includes some other things that you can use for to kind of assess, can you use your website for more tools than just storytelling and donations? So on this sheet, oh, yay. Okay, so this is what you see here, and I'll go back here, and I'll kind of point to things. So there's some different things your website can do for you. It can be a hub of information, and that could be for your recipients of service. That could be for your donors. There's a lot of different ways that you can use your website as a management tool. So that's something to think about. Is there messaging that your staff or your volunteers is repeating a lot that would make sense to move to a website so that people could have access to information? So that's to think about it from that way. Do you have more e-commerce needs than just donations? Are there other services that people could buy? Do you have ticketing for events and stuff like that? And then there's a ranking. Is it okay? Is it great, okay, needs help, desperately needs help, would be nice, not sure, don't need? So just to give yourself an assessment to think about for a minute, do you want these? Does your website track your user experience? Do you have something like Google Analytics or a heat mapping tool to be able to see how people are using your website? Because that kind of falls into, if you have, like retail's a good example. If somebody walks into a store, you can watch them walk around and make their purchasing decisions and see if they're making it to every little corner that you've decorated and set up. And if not, you can change it. You can't necessarily watch people on your website. So these tracking tools do it for you to make sure people are getting the content information that's working. Open 24 hours. That kind of goes to the idea of having a hub. If you have a hub, you are open 24 hours. People have access to you. Same with e-commerce. So thinking, is that something that's important? How does it work for customer service? Do you have a chatbot that would help people get information? Some of those can be automated. Heather, we have was it April webinar? We talked about chatbots. So we have a recording somewhere if anybody wants more information on that. But being able to automate that, even if you don't have the staff to do stuff like that. Resource Hub, kind of touched on that one. A management tool, you can use it for some of your staff training. You can use it, it's called an LMS, a learning management system, or a CRM. Is your CRM there? Those are just short list, by no means comprehensive, but just something to think about is, can your website do more? And that's why it's important to think about that long-term planning of your organization. Of you might not want or be able to do it today, but maybe in 6 months, that's something worth adding in, or 12 months, kind of a piece. Just all over the place now. Okay. All right. So I want to give you a minute just to kind of fill that in. So work through that, and then we'll talk about prioritizing it. CRM is a customer relation management tool. So like that could be your donation HubSpot. I might say Blackbaud's still the name. Okay, that's one. MailChimp. There's different levels of CRM. That there's industry specific ones for you guys. Then there's HubSpot's great because it's a bigger, broader thing. Or simpler if you're starting out, things like MailChimp. It just collects emails so you can start to build and segment lists. So Randy, for all the guests at home who cannot hear, was saying this is a good thing to share with your constituents as well to get some feedback. And I'm a huge believer of ask people, don't make assumptions. It's not that hard to pick up the phone for some of your, more active participants. People love to share their opinion, or just send out a quick survey. Those are cheap now, and so be very collaborative with this. Don't just be like, this is what I'm going to do. So yes. Okay. So I also gave you space to prioritize these. So you can start to, I'm not going to give you a ton of time to fill this in. This is take away, deal with it with your team when you have feedback, but write out the functionality that you want to add, then prioritize it, and then give it a date. That just helps work through that. People will give you money if you have a clear plan. So I'm going to give you some tools to have a clear plan about what you need your website to do if this is something you're ready to start investing in. And I assume most of you are here are ready to start investing in your website. So, all right. So Randy, you're actually a really good setup. Thank you, Heather. Because I want to give you a chance to even just fill in, what are you hearing from people? Because this is a big feed in to what you need your website to do. And these are going to be kind of little subtle things that you're hearing at board meetings, or I use the term recipients. That's anybody who gets service from you. Is there something that you hear a lot over and over, like a question, or man, it would be nice if we had like an app or something like that? This is something that I always recommend. I actually just have a document that my team has access to for things that we hear feedback on. And that's actually how we start to build our plans. I, of course, have my own ideas, but that doesn't make a difference if my clients have no desire to do that as well. So I want to serve the needs of my clients before I throw my ideas in there. So it's just a good idea to take some time and think about what is like, man, I keep hearing that over and over again. You know, we could solve that problem. And a lot of times this is a communication problem. Website is a great communication tool to solve those problems. All right. So I want to, this kind of wrap up the big purpose of your website. Just take a second and decide, is the website you have right now, is it doing what you need it to do? If it's yes, pass go, collect $200, maybe. If not, can the site that you currently have, can it be modified if what you need it to do? Or are you at that point where you're like, no, our technology is limiting us? And that happens. We were just talking about CRMs. I said MailChimp, great place to start, but you eventually outgrow stuff like that. And there's certain tools you're going to use in startup mode. And startup mode doesn't necessarily mean your organization just started, but you might be piloting a new communication tool and you don't want to put big dollars into it, you know, how to use it. So if you start with those smaller pieces, you're going to outgrow them. So it's important to know that at some point your website might be exactly what you need it to be, but you might need new technology behind it, or you might need a full refresh because, man, that's not telling the story that who we are today. So those are just some important things to be thinking about with that. And then I went ahead and put a timeline in here. So this is you to fill in all day. So ideally you'll come in and say, okay, in the next 30, 90 days, 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, what are some things as you're thinking about stuff today, do you want to start to put into action? And with that, I'm gonna hand this over to Heather.
She's coming back, so you can hold your applause. Just kidding. So, and I'm going to flip to my sides. All right. So we're going to transition into Amanda's, given us a great setup and why, trying to think through what you want your website to do, why a website matters. And I want to talk a little bit about why your story matters when it comes to your website. We say storytelling a lot. You're going to tell people your story, but I also love the viewpoint of story doing, because storytelling is all about pulling people into your story, but you don't just want to tell them a story, right? You also want to inspire them to do something with that story. And your website plays a huge role in that. So why does it matter? Why does your story matter when it comes to your website? Well, did you know that it takes 50 milliseconds, that's 0.05 seconds, for users to form an opinion. So you think about that yourself, like you meet somebody or you go somewhere and it's a snap judgment. You make that judgment of what you think about something. And so this is a big reason why your story matters when it comes to your website. And when I say your story, because sometimes people get confused, I don't just mean, like you wrote out your story, it's just words. I mean the story that you're telling through every single interaction people have with you, whether that's online or in person or wherever it may happen. I mean, sometimes it's even third person. They hear about you through somebody else, and that's still part of your story. And when it comes to your website, one of the best ways to get rid of snap judgments, improve your story. Telling matters. You want donors to be impressed and get behind your mission, your story. You want to stand out as the place volunteers want to volunteer at, improve your story. So what does that look like when it comes to having a website? What does storytelling look like on your website? Going back to our stat is one that gives people a good first impression. And it gives them a story that's on point through messaging and through your visuals. Now, you may think, well, I'm a nonprofit. People are going to give me more slack because they know that we don't have the budget that, a Fortune 500 company has. That may be true to some degree, but that can't be your excuse, because people still expect to be pulled into your story, to be able to go to your website and go, oh, that's what they do, and not be confused. So think of your home page as a door to your website. Now, doors imply an invitation to go in, right? Like you see a door and you're like, oh, there's something behind it. But not every door conveys that message to everyone. So While, you know, one person may be intrigued by an old weather-worn door, somebody else may be turned off by it. They're like, oh, I don't want to go in it. That just doesn't look great. That same judgment people have, you know, when it comes to doors, like they make that in seconds, that applies to your website too. Your homepage of your website is like the door to your website. And I guarantee probably all of you have a different reaction to these doors. So I'm going to be maybe like, oh, I like the color on that one, or that one's old, or well, that one looks newish, and I like that one. Same thing with your website. People are coming to it and going, oh, okay, I like that, or I don't. Another important thing to think about is that the home page is typically the one thing every person will read. They may never go anywhere else on your website, but they'll see your home page. So your messaging needs to speak to them. So is your homepage a door they want to open so they can see what else is behind that door? Or is your, you know, a website something that they're like, ooh, that doesn't resonate with me. I don't understand it. It's too confusing. I don't want to go any further. This is part of why understanding who your target audiences are vital. And I know we've talked about this in past workshops, and Amanda and I will both hammer this home all day long. Like, you have to know who you're speaking to. So if you know who you're speaking to, then the homepage of your website will speak to that same audience. You know, and granted, typically with a nonprofit, you're going to have an audience of donors, an audience of volunteers, an audience of the people that you serve. But you still have to understand who exactly are those people, because they have different interests based on the kind of nonprofit you are. And if you don't know who you're trying to reach, you won't know how to effectively reach them. Another important point, the homepage, which I think you probably already gotten this at this point, but it is valuable real estate. So don't squander the opportunity here. Don't be vague and confusing. Do be clear and concise. Do convey your nonprofit's personality. Like, if you're, you know, fun and engaging and whimsical, you know, say you're, you know, based in the arts or something, well, make sure your website, that homepage, and all of it reflects that. Do be on brand, because if people experience confusion, they're like, well, I've seen all this other things out and about this nonprofit. Then I go to their website and it doesn't reflect the impression I had of them elsewhere. That's going to hurt your trust and credibility with people. So again, homepage, don't let them leave without wanting to open that door of your homepage. So I'm going to, and I just pulled this randomly off the interstate. Wow. Did you know you can find websites on the interstate? The internet. So I don't know them. If anybody knows them, I'm not trying to rag on them particularly, but I was just looking for some examples of what we don't want to do. So this looks like it's probably 20 years old, is my guess. But there's no great picture to pull you in. There's no exact, oh, here's the message I want to get right away. And your eyes just kind of like, where do I go first? So let's compare that with another one. And this one is based here in Atlanta. Can you see that? Hopefully my microphone will keep working. So there's that one. And there's this one. Don't you have a different reaction to this one? I mean, you have a great photo right off the bat that's engaging. You're like, oh, look, it's a dog. It's a rescue place for dogs, Atlanta Dog Rescue Cafe. You know, there's a statement down there that helps you understand exactly what they do. And then if you keep going down on their website, you see again, here's what they're all about. Here's what they do. Here's how they do it. They have great pictures. And then if you were to go to their website, you would continue on. There's a call to action, clear call to action, all of that. So I don't have any affiliation with them other than being LinkedIn friends with the founder of it. But I thought that's a good example of just what great pictures, it's very on brand for them, and what it can do. And then here, this one is a personal example. So this is a new nonprofit I have been involved in helping get started. And our web developer that we use built this one out. But we had a brand guideline to begin with. And so the website is very on brand for what we want. We've got, you know, we haven't opened our doors yet. So we've had to pull stock photos, but this stock photo works. We've got a clear call to action. You understand what it's all about and what it's doing. So again, This home page is prime real estate. Don't squander it. All right, and so in front of you guys, I wanted to give you some time to kind of think through your own homepage. There is a messaging template. If you're online, you should have received that via email. And so what I want you to do is to look at your own website, spend a few minutes, either pull it up on your phone or if you've got a laptop, and use this template. And this is also based off of Donna Miller's story brand, which Amanda had shared, and we tweaked it for this class today. But it's just a great process to go through and think, okay, do I have the key elements that I need on my current website? And if I don't, what should be on there? And you can jot notes down, fill in the blanks on the worksheet, and have some time to just think through how am I best using this valuable real estate that I have. So take a few minutes, just go through that worksheet, jot down some notes. If you have questions, just let us know. All right, we are going to get started again. And we're going to be talking about website design and user experience. And so originally we were going to bring in Zach Cheatham, who's a developer that we have used for some of our client sites, but he's not available, but he was gracious to give me a whole bunch of notes. So pretend I'm Zach and I'm a web developer, designer, and I'm telling you what you need to know. But I'm very thankful because this is definitely his wheelhouse. So as I mentioned before the break, your website makes a first impression on everyone who visits it. Zach calls it your online handshake. And I think you have called it your international storefront. Okay. So online handshake, international storefront, it all means it's a big deal. And so just like in real life, that first impression often makes or breaks the entire relationship, which we're talking about when it comes to messaging as well. And a big part of this, there are many nonprofits, many businesses, organizations who are losing out on customers they didn't even know they had just because of a poor first impression. So another reason why this is so very, very important. All right, so when it comes to user experience design, consistency is key. It's key to delivering a good user experience. There are 3 areas of consistency that Zach wants us to focus on today. Consistent with current and familiar web trends, consistent messaging and voice, consistent website experience on all platforms. And so we're going to go through each one of these and kind of give you an overview of what they are and what you need to know for your websites. All right, so consistent with current and familiar website trends, here are some things that we want you to do. So do research other websites to discover current trends in design. Because like anything we know with technology, it changes, and sometimes it changes radically very, very quickly. So go out and see what other people are doing, what the current trends are. And Brandy and I were just having this conversation, you have to think mobile first. And I was trying to remember, I think before the pandemic, probably in 2019, it was almost an even split 50-50 as to what people were viewing whether they were viewing on mobile versus a desktop. And I think the latest I saw as of this year is it's now 60-40. So 60% of people are viewing on their mobile, on their device first. 40% are still going to their desktop, their laptop, whatever. So when you think about your website, you have to have a great mobile experience. Because you think about all of us. If somebody is talking to you like, oh, I work for this nonprofit, or, I found this great deal somewhere, what do? You pull out your phone and you look at it. And if you can't navigate easily or find what you need, then you get frustrated, right? You're like, well, I just, forget it. I'll try to get to it when I get back to my office or my desk, and half the time we forget and don't do that. So for most organizations, the majority of those visitors will only ever act with your site on a mobile device. So your design has to be optimized for that type of screen and natural to interact with. So that's another thing. When you're doing an audit of your current website, make sure you're looking at it on your phone and going, okay, does everything work? Is it easy to get navigation? So on and so forth. Along with that, as part of the things to do, consider navigation and page structure one of the most important elements of designing your site. So consider navigation and page structure one of the most important elements of designing your site. You want people to find quick access to your menu, to your subpages, without having, and you don't want to nest content so deep that it's hard to find. Like if somebody is trying to find, your about page and they have to click through 10 times just to find it, that's not a great user experience. So some things to not do. So don't reinvent the wheel just for the sake of being different. It can be done, but trends usually emerge for one reason, because they work. So go with the things that work. Don't think, ooh, somebody random said this, and so we're going to try it, and then it just falls flat. Don't rely, and this goes back to our other point, on interactions that only work on traditional desktops. And so when I say that, I'm talking about things like hover animations. So if you have to use your mouse to hover over something and it changes or does something cool, that's a hover animation. That typically is not going to work on a mobile device. So you have to think through these things. Or something that's a large full screen experience. Like it might look great on a desktop or laptop. And, oh, that's so cool. But you have to think, how is that going to translate to mobile? And most of the time, it's not going to translate very well. I don't know about this microphone, if it's going to last. So just make sure that there's what Zach calls a graceful fallback state for unsupported devices. So if you're going to go with something really cool for a desktop experience, then think, okay, how can I make that work for mobile? Like I can't take this exact same thing, but how can I try to replicate that in a way that works for mobile? All right, consistent messaging and voice when it comes to user experience. One important thing to think is this feels like you. Like it has to feel like your organization. Your website should reflect who you are. This means the topography, the color scheme, choice of photography, your logo, your branding, everything has to match up with the real life organization. Otherwise, there's going to be a big disconnect. This may seem like a design question rather than a user experience question, but if your aesthetic and voice are inconsistent with your overall mission, it creates a disconnect. And the problem with disconnects is then people start to struggle with trust. They're like, well, if this doesn't seem right, then how do I know that everything else with them is going to be right? So, and it's also distracting and it leads to confusion when trying to interact with your website. All right, here are some things to do when we're still talking about consistent messaging and voice. So make sure your colors, fonts, photos, messaging match up with your printed materials, your social media presence, and your in-person engagement. So again, it goes back to, are you telling the story across every single platform, virtually or in person? Don't use alternate logos, or use stock images that don't align with your mission or vision. So I get it. There are some nonprofits that you don't have either great photos or you can't because of the people that you're serving, but just make sure if you're pulling stock photos that they actually look like they go with who you are. So for example, Zach, our developer, I had showed this earlier, but he did Stephen's website, and as you'll see, on the next slide, the branding, look, all of that is very consistent, just like the signage that we have out by the road too. And all the rest of the materials that are coming will look this as well. All right, third point in Zach, we're talking about user experience and all that. A consistent website experience across all platforms is very important. So what you want to think is no matter how they interact with us, wherever they are, they're going to get the same experience. Our previous point focused on staying true to your brand across all areas of engagement. This point focuses on making sure your website itself is consistent for all visitors. So here's some technical points, and we'll send these out afterwards as well. But do use a fluid responsive design. Fluid responsive design. So this just means that your website adapts to any screen. So if it's on an iPad, if it's on a desktop, if it's on a mobile device, it will go from tall and narrow to wide. It just will adapt fluidly, whatever it is, which is part of making sure your experience is consistent. Do try to keep all of the same content on every screen. I know in the past when we were designing websites and you would have a mobile version of your website, then you would try to think through, okay, we can't have everything that we have on the desktop version, so what should we take away or hide and all those kinds of things. But now you want to think through, again, consistency. Like everything that's on that home screen, how do we replicate that for mobile? And maybe it needs a display in different ways. Maybe you have a set of 3 blocks that are going to show up vertically stacked on mobile, but they will expand on a desktop screen. But the content is the same, and so to the user, it feels like the same experience. So just think through that. Zach says, make sure you provide fallback content that makes sense for each screen. So for example, if a full paragraph won't fit in a hero image on a mobile page, you can provide a shortened excerpt with a button that just says read more. So it's just thinking creatively, how do I still give them that same experience? And then it won't feel like content's missing, it's just reorganized in a way that makes sense for that experience. And to my earlier point, do not create a separate mobile site. So this is something to ask if you're pulling in a developer or anybody, hey, are you designing mobile first? Which means like we said, you design for the mobile experience first and the desktop experience second. Or are you still, thinking 5+ years ago and we have to create a separate mobile site? That's gone away. Don't worry about fitting everything on the screen at once. It is better to scroll and take in content than have to zoom. I'm sure all of us have come across a website that's not optimized for mobile. And so you're like, okay, half the page is not even on the screen, so let me zoom in, and then you can't read the entire sentence. It's just really frustrating. So just think about, I may have to break that, make it a longer scrolling experience, but that's okay. Let it breathe, as Zach says. Big thing, don't make buttons and text too small on mobile. How many of y'all have gotten so frustrated because you're like, I can't get the button, it's too small, or it hits another button next to it because they're too close together, and you're just like, I wanted to give you money, but now I can't give you money because you didn't make the experience great. So think about that. Text and buttons should be readable and clickable. So 3 things to remember from Zach when it comes to user experience and website messaging and design. All right, how are we doing on time? Okay, 7 minutes left. Good. So Amanda's got a great story. We're talking about experience and design from Disney. So I'm going to pass it over to her for a second.
All right. So Heather's done a great job of talking through your own website. But when I started talking to you guys earlier today, I talked about all these other third parties, which you guys use. You use different ways to collect donations. You could have a CRM. You could have social media. You have an entire digital experience, and you need to think about all of that. So we're just going to make it more complicated. So what I want to talk a little bit about is, how do you sit in your customer's experience? So I'm going to share a little story about Walt Disney in Disneyland. He made some pretty cool customer experiences in his day. And there's this great story from his Imagineers of bringing some international guests to Disneyland to go on the jungle tour. And he took them on, and his Imagineer saw Walt get off, and he had this look. And he was like, okay, I know Walt's going to find me after this. Finished up with his guests and came back and found his Imagineer and said, we're going to go ride the jungle tour. They rode the jungle tour for like 6 hours because there were a lot of issues as Walt went through. He said, it's too fast. We're not noticing this. He got to sit in and witness his attraction as a guest as he was sitting with his guest and went, "This is broken," which you won't notice unless you sit in the seat of your customers and go, "All right, you know what? This boat's going too fast. We didn't notice the elephant spewing the water and making the silly face." And they went through and itemized every little experience until it was exactly what Walt wanted it to be. And that's what you actually need to think about with your digital experience. You need to sit in the seat of your customer, play pretend, and be like, okay, I'm coming to the website for the first time. What is this like? What are the buttons I can go through? One of the best ways to replicate that Disney experience is you bring somebody to sit with you who doesn't know your brand. And typically I'd find somebody, that you find a friend who isn't super technically savvy. We all have those friends, we all have those family members, and you walk through it with them and you can explain it or you can watch them go through. Because if you go from your website and you go to like an event sign up page, does it feel like it's the same from your website to that new third party? You want to make sure, is your branding coming across, is your messaging come across, does it feel like it's the same experience? So that's what's a really important part. Don't just put blinders on, this is my website. People don't just stay in your website. You go from your website to your social media to a sign up to a donation, and you want to think about all of those experiences. So we did give you a checklist. And this is my web designers pulled this together for you guys, of to think about what is your experience when you're going through your site. So this is a combination. I have two pieces for this. First one is your UX checklist, which Heather just touched on a lot of this. So this is a good high level, is this working? The term we like to use is your website finger friendly? And what I usually do, my dad has really big hands, and I know this sounds weird, but I give him any website we do because if his big fingers can work the buttons, I know we're good. So you can go be a little creepy like me and go look at people's hands and go, okay, yeah, I need you to test my website. So that's what you're starting to look for, because we do have mainly women in here. We have smaller fingers. We're going to have a different experience than people. So talk about diversity inclusion. We have to think about hand sizes when we're designing mobile devices. So this checklist is here for you guys to kind of work through. Look at your site, take that back to your priority list of things you want to update, and then the next one. Also gave you just another worksheet to work through, going through thinking about your website, your CRM, your donation portal, and you can keep adding to this. If you have other platforms you use, is my message on the website match the CRM? Does the donation, same thing? Do you have the right tagline? Do you have the right logo? It's a little meticulous, but that's okay because you want to make sure you have that great jungle cruise. So that's what you're trying to work through. And then gave you space to just put a little punch list of things you want to clean up. So those are some things to think about when you are doing your UX. And we have a minute to be able to turn over. Okay.
So we have a guest who's coming in virtually, and so we're going to switch over our screens. There's Erin. So I want to introduce Erin Gordon, who is joining us virtually from Jacksonville, Florida. Hey, Erin.
Hey, Heather.
Erin is the founder of Savvy Marketing, and also recently acquired another advertising and marketing firm called Fisher Advertising. She has a deep knowledge of web design and development, SEO, PPC, and more, and is going to share with us about website optimization. Fun fact, Erin and I go way back. She was my virtual worker for years when we were both starting our businesses and had nobody else to talk to except each other through Skype. So we kept each other sane.
Those
yeah.
are the
So welcome, Erin, and you can take it away.
Thank you. So I'm really excited to share some SEO knowledge that I've learned through being a developer for over a decade, and also through a lot of study and certifications. As Heather mentioned, we go way back. Our love of horses, from growing up on ranches to starting our own marketing agencies, has been fun. We've also worked on a lot of projects together over the years. So I'm going to share my screen and kind of jump in. Let me know if you guys can't hear me. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to jump into is there are two types of SEO. So I'm going to go over the first one and then the second one. So we have on-page optimization, which is the structure of how you are optimizing your site. So you're going to want to make sure your metadata, which I'm going to get into in a minute, is structured around your keywords. You're going to want to have structured data. This is the newest algorithm update that just came out a few months ago. This is in the form of content and also code that goes on the back of your website. And you can use a plugin. One of my favorite plugins on a WordPress site is Yoast. There's also other websites that have space, and Google gives you free tools. So I'm going to give you guys some direction on tools and where to find this type of stuff. But the number one thing you can do for your site is make sure that you have your search listings registrations. These are Google Maps. You can have Apple Maps, Facebook pages count as search registrations. So these are definitely the way that people find you the most, and you want to have those keyword optimized. But one of the other big updates that just came out a few months ago is load speed. So Google is actually giving more rankings to websites that load faster on mobile. They also came out and said that they don't like heavy load builders. So they're going back to less less of these pre-built websites like Wix and Squarespace and stuff like that. They're not giving as much priority as custom-built websites, which is not new information to the development community, but it is affecting rankings in a huge capacity. So other than that, the easiest thing you can do for your on-page optimization is make sure that you have keywords inside your website and they are internally linked back to other pages in your website. So that means if you create a blog, you have those keywords structured inside that blog and you're linking to those pages that coincide with that content. The second big other side of optimization is what we call off-page optimization. These are social pages and posts. They are search listings. These are your Google Maps and otherwise. Then there is news. Anytime you can get in the news or get a press release out, those are counted as authority backlinks. And Google says the more authority backlinks you have, the more rankings you're going to get because they see you as an authority in the industry. Also, your website registrations are very, very important. Most people don't know that Bing and Google carry a search console, is what we call it. And this is where you register your site and put in sitemaps to link back to your website. So it literally tells Google how to utilize your website. And then, of course, other backlinks include social media postings, which are one of the biggest backlinks, but also anywhere else you can link on the web, except for there are some websites you don't want to be backlinked from, and you can actually get penalized for those backlinks. So sometimes if your website was hacked, you'll want to go in and disown some of those backlinks. So I'm going to take a step back and go over what I call your digital base camp. So everything on the web should lead back to your website because that is your property. That's like your house. And so you want to make sure that your website, as Heather said earlier from Zach's notes, that this is the biggest brochure you can have, and you should invest in it because that's how people are going to make their decisions about your company. Most people, when they meet you, they're going to do two things. They're going to look you up on social media, and then they're going to look up your website. And they're going to notice if you have content wrong or typos or design flaws in your website, and they're going to make an assumption about your company. So that is the number one thing I can say should be in your resources. The next is everyone should have Google Analytics set up. It is a free tool. It allows you to track and benchmark your traffic and what people are doing with your website. Even tell you demographics of, how many percentage of male to female or age ranges. So you can say, this is our audience and this is how they're using our website. And you can look at the data and make decisions for the future based on data. The next I just mentioned is your search console. So if you just Google Webmaster Tools or Search Console, you'll find it. Same thing for Bing. You want to make sure your website is registered with the 2 major search engines and submitted sitemaps to it. The third thing is you want to make sure that website is optimized for search engine optimization. I like to tell people, well, yeah, you have a pretty website, but it's like having a billboard in a desert. People don't see it. So that's where your SEO comes into play. You want to make sure that people can find you, and you've invested all this money in your website. Now make sure people can find you. And then number 4, your search listings. So again, that's Google Maps, Apple Maps, Yelp. Those are all ways that people find you when they're searching for a nonprofit near me, or even it's as simple as if you're looking for an AC company, you're going to look for in the search listings first usually. So, okay, so I'm going to kind of give you my theory on how to build keyword strategy. So we have a couple of tools that we use, and I will give you a link in a few minutes of where you can look at your keywords. And so this is how we break down keywords. We start with our branded keywords. This includes your company name, your nonprofit name, and the indicators to that. So it's not just that you want to show up for your branded name, but you want to make sure that it explains what your nonprofit company is. So for us, it would be like saying just Fisher Agency. Well, that could be an insurance company, right? Or it could be, if I spell it out as Fisher Design and Advertising in Jacksonville, that's a full keyword phrase, and that's what we would want to rank for. So in your first keyword structure, you're going to make sure that you have your branded company name plus the indicators of how people would search for it. Then also any alternative nonprofit names that you have. Sometimes people are calling your company different things, and you want to rank for that too, so make sure that you encompass both ways. So we have different ways in every location. So make sure if you service the entire United States or just locally that you are making those appropriate keywords. The second is we pick out our strategy keywords. So you're going to use a keyword tool in this situation. We have a free keyword tool that's called House, and you can find the link on my website, or I'll give it to Heather to send out. And you're going to want to choose those keywords based on how people search for you. So as someone said earlier, you want to put yourself in your audience's shoes. If they're looking for a nonprofit near me that helps with Christian, I'm trying to think of some of the ones we've done before. Christian childcare, for example, then you're going to want to make sure that you find those keywords, and then you're going to choose those keywords based on the average monthly searches. So in other words, choose the ones that have higher volume, and then you're going to want to use a rule of 3. You want high competition, medium competition, and low competition. And the reason why is SEO is a long game plan. Sometimes it takes years to pay off, but when it does, it usually ranks well for years. So you want to rank first for the low competition, you want to grow into your medium competition, and you want to shoot for your high competition. So that's why we suggest, breaking up the rule of 3. You want to choose keywords that you can rank fast for, get people following you, but also keep shooting for those high competition keywords. So also, once we choose our strategy keywords, we choose variation keywords. In some ways that you would do, the number one way of people searching, you would add near me to your top keyword. Or if you're selling a service or product, then you say for sale. That's how people search. And for you guys, it would be like nonprofit or company. But the other 2 ways that people search is best and top. So they add it to whatever keyword phrase. So just like if you were looking for a preschool, for example, you want to look for the best or the top preschools in my area. So you would add best preschool in Atlanta, for example. So once that's done, you have your keywords, and you want to put those keywords everywhere on your search listings, on your social media, on your websites, and your metadata. And I'm going to go through metadata next. So here's our formula for how we design metadata. And what metadata is to us is both code that goes on the website and on the back of a website, and also how people search for the content on the front of your website. So you're going to start with, just like I talked about, you're going to add your strategy keyword and your variation keywords to create your long tail keyword. That's what we call it. So in other words, an example would be a top preschool in Atlanta, Georgia. If my strategy keyword is preschool Atlanta, Georgia, then you want to create your full keyword in in a way that people would search for it. That's your long tail keyword. So once you do that, there are a few ways that Google wants and gives priority ranking. There's your page URL. That means if you were looking at magnoliamedia.group, it would be /advertising nonprofit agency would be a long tail keyword of your page URL. In that same subject, you want to use that keyword in your page title for your meta title on the back of your website. So Heather would use Magnolia Media Group, a top nonprofit advertising agency in Atlanta, Georgia. That would be her meta title. If that meta title is clear enough, you can also use that for your H1 title. And your H1 title is the largest text on the front of your website. Just keep in mind that Google wants it to be 60 characters or less, and you want to maximize that space. So I would try to make that title as close to 60 characters as possible. The next is your meta description. You're going to, again, you want to make sure that same keyword is in your meta description, and you want to include a description of that page and a call to action. So an example in this situation would be choose a top nonprofit advertising agency in Atlanta, Georgia. View our content on nonprofit advertising. That would be your call to action, your descriptor, and your keyword phrase. So once you have that done, the next step is pretty simple. You want to choose 1 to 3 of your top keywords and put it into the body copy. That's the largest copy on your website, on that page. and you want to link that to additional pages that coincide with that content. So internal linking is one of the best things you can do in the body copy. Making sure that you're linking internal links is also a strong indicator that you are going to rank high for that keyword. I hope that explains it, but if you have questions, I'm happy to go in a little bit deeper into that. So here are my tips for top 5 search listings. Make sure that you are registered on Google Business. That's your maps if you pull it up on your phone. Most Android come default with Google Maps, but most Apple phones do not. They have Apple Maps, which is why that's my second. But most Apple people do install Google Maps. So Google Maps will always be, for the near future, the #1 search listing you can have. There's a ton of ways to optimize it. Google actually just came out with another way to include backlinks from your products on your Google Maps listings. So make sure that you're utilizing that to the best of your ability. Then you have Apple Maps, Yellow Pages, and Manta are my top 5. There's about 150 others. The more you get, the better. But in this situation, just try to at least have your top 5 with your keyword strategy. So here are some of my top tools that we give away for free. So if you have some more questions, there is additional keyword strategy training on fisheragency.com/tools. There's also a tool for choosing the best SEO tools for your website. There's also a metadata template. So we've put together formulas, examples, and a structure for creating your SEO, and we're giving it away for free. We also have a ton of other different tools on there that you are welcome to for free. So also, Heather has offered a free SEO report, and here is all you need to do. You need to email help@123shoot.com. I'll let Heather take it from here.
Thank you, Erin. That was great. I appreciate you joining us and giving up part of your morning for us. So thanks a lot.
Anytime.
Yeah, you're welcome. And that parting gift is actually from Amanda and her team. They have put together that SEO report for you guys. So you've got a bunch of great tools you can use. And so I'm going to let Amanda, Amanda explain a little bit about that as we wrap up and get you guys out of here.
Awesome. Yeah, and everything that Erin just talked about is spot on. But this is just to show you, how does Google see your website? So she talked about page speed. She talked about keywords. She talked about some of those registrations, as in like social media and your listings. And so this will just give you kind of a report to see, so how does Google see your site? And it'll give you a punch list of things you can go in and fix. So just shoot an email there or hand Valerie our card, and we'll get a report over to you guys if you want that. Oh, yeah, Erin, can you progress to the next slide? You're in charge right now. All right, so thank you guys. We actually ended a little early. I can't believe that happened. So if you guys do need additional support with any of this, this is Heather and I's contact information. We'll send out Erin's as well in a follow-up piece so that you have that. We did have a question that came through the chat on some of the websites from like small, medium, large that we think are the best. So Heather and I will pull together some samples so that you guys can have some inspiration pieces that we can work through for that.
I have one more little announcement that Magnolia Media hasn't put out to the world yet, but we just launched a nonprofit storytelling podcast. So if you guys want to subscribe on any of the podcast apps, we'd love that. Randy is actually on one of the first episodes. Yay! So, and again, it's a soft launch. We haven't, I thought, well, I'll give you guys a first look into it. So let us know what you think, and if there's any ways you think we can improve it too. And so thank you guys for hanging out with us today. Let us know any questions. I think Randy's going to wrap us up. I'm going to hand it over.
Okay, aren't those two amazing? Just incredible information. My head is, that's why I hire these two to take care of all of that, right? Just keywords. I'm going to stay up all night thinking about keywords now and that. But thank you guys for your time. I know that, you know, the Community Foundation right now, move to the right, move to the right, right, you know, to the right. At the Community Foundation right now, you know, I charge Heather with refreshing new stories on our website every 2 to 3 weeks, new pictures every 2 to 3 weeks. So people come back and they get a new experience every time. So constantly, you know, refreshing that for us. Right now, we are also thinking through a new strategic plan that, you know, if I get Randy's way, he's going to tie to new branding for the Community Foundation next year. So everything will change and we have to think through that and how we communicate that. So again, we thank you for your time. Reminder, fundraising coming up. Now you know how to tell your story better, right, Laura? You're good on the story. Boom. You know, you run the Hudgens Art Center. We think you already have good pictures. So from there. So coming up on the, you know, the 19th back in here, and that will be really good. And thank you all for your time and your day. Bye.